Wyatt Earp. Made a name for himself as a peace officer.
I heard of you.
I'm retired.
You must be Doc Holliday.
Tombstone was undoubtedly one of the most popular westerns of the early 1990s era. From the moment its red title flashed across TV screens, it became an instant sensation. It wasn't just a movie, it was pure cinema, with unadulterated grit and chaos that makes it highly interesting to this very day. From actors nearly leaving the cinematic film to climactic showdowns, these are 20 weird facts about Tombstone. Number 1. The writer was originally the director. Kevin Jarre is the brain behind epic screenplays like Judgment Night and Tombstone. The latter was written based on the real lives of people like Wyatt Earp and Doc Holliday. The story was also based on real events like the gunfight at the OK Corral, but that's besides the point. You might have missed that Jarre wasn't just the guy who wrote the script. After the script was bought, he was also attached to direct the production, and it was his directorial debut. Alas, it seemed that Jarre was a bit over his head as the film began to fall behind schedule, and Jarre lacked the requirements needed to direct a major motion picture. A month into filming, Kevin Jarre was fired and replaced by George A. Cosmatos, who took his job seriously. As the new director, he leaned heavily into the historical accuracy and realism of the story. This realism and accuracy were brought to life through costumes, props, and scenery. However, his need for realism was also perceived as demanding by others on set. The nature of the set was reportedly described as overarchingly demanding, and it inevitably gave Cosmatos a bad rep for going overboard in his needs and expectations during production. Number 2. Kurt Russell did all the heavy lifting. When it comes to the opening and closing credits, the role of director goes to Cosmatos. However, behind the scenes, the true director was Kurt Russell. According to several reports, life on set was a mess, and so was production. Kurt Russell stepped in without tooting horns or blaring sirens, met with the studio, reorganized the call sheets, and even went as far as hand-picking scenes. His power on set was quiet yet adequate, and he never took credit for it. This behind-the-scenes story of Tombstone had been rumored for years, and at some point, Russell finally opened up about it. He stated that he also directed the movie, besides starring as Wyatt Earp. The plot thickens as Russell claims he also had a hand in hiring Cosmatos, but as a ghost director. He didn't want any credit as the film director. He was happy to be one of the star actors. While Russell's account of the behind-the-scenes stories tallies with all of the rumors, it is essential to know that some other actors in the film have disputed this. For one, Val Kilmer has stated that while Kurt Russell did essentially direct the movie, he did not direct the movie. His statement is as confusing as you think because it confirms and denies Russell's claims. Another actor, Michael Biehn, had a varying opinion as he stated that Russell did not direct him personally. Whatever the case may be, Cosmatos himself admitted that Russell was steering the ship. Number 3. The casting choices could have taken a different turn. Before Val Kilmer was considered for the role of Doc Holliday, William Dafoe's name went around the block as the first choice. At the time, Dafoe was perfect for the role. He had everything going for him, from the voice to the unpredictable personality and even the edge. However, the studio was also very much aware of Dafoe's controversy. While Dafoe was seriously being considered for the role, Buena Vista Pictures, the film distributors in the United States, reportedly said they would pull out of the distribution if Dafoe was cast, and the rest, as they say, is history. Then came Val Kilmer, who stepped into the role of Doc Holliday and made it epic in all proportions. He gave life to his character in a way that only great actors can. Val Kilmer made Doc Holliday an immortal character. Looking back, he was the perfect choice to bring the character to life. On the other hand, there was another surprising casting choice, as Kurt Russell himself wasn't the studio's first or even second choice for Wyatt Earp. The studio reportedly wanted a bigger and more traditional leading man. However, Russell fought for the role. He brought a different side to the character. He saw Earp as a man of grief, rage, and contradiction. Russell took a different perspective on the character and ran with it, despite the risk and the constant questioning about his look, tone, and mustache. Number 4. It makes use of one of the first iconic film images. The creation of Tombstone was well thought out and executed. It is a known fact that every single attention to detail was effortlessly carried out. You didn't know that the opening image of Tombstone is from one of the earliest films in history. Tombstone started strong with an old image of a cowboy outlaw firing directly at the camera. This image comes from the 1903 film The Great Train Robbery. It is one of the earliest films that significantly impacted the public, and the image of the bandit firing at the screen is so epic that it has been referenced up to a dozen times throughout history. It was referenced at the end of Goodfellas, and its reference in Tombstone is just another example of where it's been used. Back in 1903, movie lovers and everyone who saw the movie were shocked by the image. They thought they were being fired upon because of how real it seemed. This image, referenced in Tombstone, gives it an even higher mark in the ranking of legendary movies that have ever existed. Number 5. The ending was altered. When it comes to epic movies like Tombstone, it isn't unusual that a few changes are made here and there. In the original cut of the film, the ending was reportedly abrupt. Wyatt Earp could be seen walking off alone, and test audiences felt an unnerving sense that the film was unfinished and emotionally unresolved. The studio didn't like the feedback and was unwilling to let it go without making some changes first, so they decided to do something about it. The studio approved a last-minute and expensive last-stage rewrite. New scenes were created, and the ending was a solemn farewell with Doc Holliday and a final epilogue in the snow with Josephine. The original script by Kevin Jarre did not have this ending, but they decided to go with it anyway. In the end, the ending of Tombstone gave the audience closure, and the movie gracefully became one of the top films in history with a lifelong impact. Number 6. Replacing the director almost cost Tombstone an actor. Can you imagine a world where Michael Biehn didn't play the role of Johnny Ringo? Luckily, you don't have to imagine that, because it didn't happen, but it almost did, and here's why. Biehn was friends with the original director and the screenplay writer, Kevin Jarre. However, his friend was fired as the director because of specific requirements that were not met, and Biehn wasn't pleased with this decision. To make matters worse, the new director wasn't his cup of tea. Biehn felt the new director did not understand the screenplay concept and wasn't the biggest fan of the change. Michael Biehn was so displeased with it all that he reportedly thought about quitting the film. However, he stayed on despite it all and continued to play Ringo. Biehn brought Ringo to life in a way no one else could, so it's good that he never went through with the idea of quitting. Number 7. Kilmer's unbroken character and weird nomination. Val Kilmer took his job of portraying Doc Holliday quite seriously. Whenever he stepped onto set, he was no longer Val, but Doc Holliday. From the moment the camera started rolling and even off camera, he changed his walk, slurred his speech, and kept his body hunched like a man losing himself to an illness. Between takes, he would stay eerily distant and oftentimes cold. Kilmer never broke character during his lunch break, rehearsals, or even when the cameras stopped rolling. He was always in character, and his fellow castmates were unsure how to approach him. It was almost as though Kilmer had disappeared while his character had all the spotlight. While Kilmer went all out as Doc Holliday, the character did not earn him an Oscar nomination. Strangely enough, he got 2 nominations from the MTV Movie Awards, one for Best Male Performance and another for the Most Desirable Male. The second nomination was considered weird because in Tombstone, Kilmer played an alcoholic character dying of tuberculosis. Number 8. Every major studio rejected the Tombstone script. Before Tombstone became the cult classic we all know and love, its journey to fame was far from easy. Screenwriter Kevin Jarre fought an uphill battle in boardrooms for the script to see the light of day. At first, every major studio turned the script down as though it were no good. The script was historically accurate and layered, emotionally compelling, dense, and deeply thought-provoking. However, the studios called it too long, serious, and crowded. They also believed the Western genre was dead, so they put the Tombstone screenplay in their dog pile. Jarre never gave up any hope. He kept revising the screenplay and pitching it. Eventually, an independent financier took a chance on Jara and his script. Soon enough, production was in full swing, but on a tight budget. This financier saw the beauty of the film when no one wanted it. The story wasn't just about the Old West, it was also an artwork that had to fight for its moment in the sun. Now, Tombstone is an artistic masterpiece that has captured the hearts of many in the cinema. The irony is that the same studios that rejected it at first came back crawling in desperation for the movie's distribution rights when they saw its success. Number 9. The gunfight at the OK Corral took 4 days to shoot. The gunfight at the OK Corral is noted to be one of the most famous scenes in the movie, and the fact that it almost broke the production is a weird fact to know. The scene's success reportedly rode on the back of dozens of cameras, a full cast, live gunfire, explosions timed to the millisecond, and dialogue that had to flow in perfect synchronicity under a world of chaos. What looks like a quick burst of Western justice took nearly 4 long days to get it right. The actors went through a lot as they ended up bruised. The props also went through the ringer as they trashed, and by the final take, some crew members had stopped watching the monitors and covered their ears. While the scene took quite a time and effort to carry out, it ended up being one of the most unforgettable shutouts in film history, proving once again that the most epic scenes are born out of an enduring experience and teamwork between the cast and crew. Aside from the OK Corral scene, the entire Tombstone shoot was brutal. The cast and crew had to film in the brutal Arizona heat with thick costumes, real guns, and a chaotic schedule from sunrise to midnight. The cast and crew all had to survive the brutal shooting conditions of the Tombstone. And while it seems like a movie that was effortlessly made, there's a need to remember that it took a lot of work and dedication. Number 10. The real Tombstone town tried to stop production. Tombstone might be a raving success today, but back in the day, when it was about to be produced, not everyone was thrilled that it was being brought. When everyone had caught on to the news that Hollywood was filming a stylized version of Wyatt Earp's legendary story, some residents of the real Tombstone, Arizona, were unhappy and wasted no time showing their displeasure. These residents pushed back as they called the script inaccurate, violent, and flashy. Some residents demanded that the production be halted, claiming it dishonored their town's legacy. A few longtime citizens reportedly sent letters to stop production. However, the crew ignored all the demands, but tensions were still high. Due to the pushback from the real town, some background shots had to be relocated, and local officials considered blocking access to landmarks. While the real town lost its battle to shut down production, its message was loud and clear. They sparked a massive reminder that Tombstone belonged to history before it belonged to Hollywood. Luckily for the real town, it is safe to say that the Hollywood movie Tombstone did justice to its history. Number 11. Costume choices were historically accurate but uncomfortable. One of the reasons why Tombstone was a raving success could be attributed to the accuracy in storytelling. Every button and every boot in Tombstone was selected with accuracy, realism, and authenticity in mind. Every attention to detail in the costume choices resulted in the most gorgeous visuals, but it was physical agony for those who wore the costumes. The wool coats were accurate for the world of 1880s fashion, but in real time, they were horrible for the desert heat. Some actors had layers of fabric, which they sweated right through. Others fainted, while others had to change shirts between takes to hide the stains. The circumstances were ridiculous, and Val Kilmer even joked that playing a man with tuberculosis wrapped in heat-trapping fabric was his most he had ever done method acting. Going all out with the historical accuracy of the costumes came with a modern-day disadvantage. Perhaps, if you were to ask the actors if the discomfort was worth it, they would scream a resounding yes. The costume added to the rich storytelling of Tombstone, and while it was a pain, it did a lot of good. Number 12. Dana Delaney wasn't the first choice for Josephine Marcus. Another weird fact about Tombstone is that the role of Josephine Marcus wasn't just handed to Dana Delaney. The actress wasn't among the studio's first few choices, and they wanted actresses with more traditional glamour. Most of the actresses they had in mind had the kind of Old West look that the audience expected. However, they were utterly blown away when Delaney read the script. Dana Delaney didn't view the character Josephine as just another romantic figure. Instead, she saw the character as a strong woman with a bold, defiant spirit. Delaney went to the audition with a different perspective of the character. She did not soften herself for the camera, and she did not play the role seductively. Instead, she brought stillness, confidence, and a quiet rebellion to the role. This wasn't what the casting directors had in mind for the role, but it was precisely what the film needed. Delaney didn't need to play Josephine's character in a dangerously stereotypical way. Instead, she took a considerable risk, and, like Josephine, Delaney earned her place in the industry by refusing to fit the mold. Number 13. Michael Biehn, almost passed out. During the final duel, the duel between Doc Holliday and Johnny Ringo will be one of modern Western cinema's most mind-blowing and haunting moments. The scene wasn't loud, but its silence portrayed a certain deadliness, sending shivers down the spine. Behind the scenes, Michael Biehn, as Ringo, was pushed to a physical breaking point and limit. The Arizona heat, layers of black wool, and brutal schedule left him in the worst state of dehydration. As the scene for the climactic standoff went on, there were no words or sudden movements, but then, at some point, things began to change for Biehn. He felt the ground shift and his legs weaken, and he began to lose balance, but he tried his hardest to stay in character. At some point, his hand began to twitch against his holster. This was a sign that he had reached breaking point, but he carried on regardless, giving the film a certain level of realism. Also, while under physical pressure, Michael Biehn had a distant look in his eyes, but as the character Ringo, that look translated to raw endurance. Number 14. Sam Elliott, almost leftover script changes. There's no doubt about it. Sam Elliott was made for the role of Virgil Earp. The role demanded a confident demeanor, quiet conviction, and depth, and Elliott delivered on all counts. The crazy part is that Elliott almost dropped out of production due to specific changes being made to the script. During the weeks leading up to production, the certainty Elliott once had to play the role was slowly vanishing. The script initially drew him in was subtle and filled with deep, meaningful silences, moral tensions, and emotional restraints. However, the rewrites had done more damage than good, as the script lost touch. To Elliott, Virgil Earp wasn't just another gunslinger. He was also a man with a compass who held the line when others gave in. However, with more rewrites came a more softened dialogue that wasn't like the original script Elliott had fallen in love with. Soon enough, he began to lose hope and felt the story slipping away. This wasn't something he could stand by and watch silently or even stand behind, so he picked up the phone to let the producers know that he was considering stepping away from the movie. Everything changed when Kurt Russell stepped in. Elliott and Russell had a quiet meeting where they discussed the script, scene by scene and line by line. This was a monumental moment as they worked together to reshape the moments that mattered most. The strength and moral values that the character Virgil once had in the beginning were restored. In turn, Elliott stayed, and thanks to his change of heart, Tombstone kept its anchor character and the beloved actor who brought the character to life. Number 15. Helped write Doc Holliday's catchy Latin dialogue. Another weird fact that seems to astonish people today is that the famous verbal duel between Holliday and Ringo, half gunslinger, half scholar, was more than just clever writing. It was part of Kilmer's thorough homework, and he worked with historians and Latin experts to ensure the insults were accurate in both the language and the era. Kilmer scored an A on his assignment because the results became a fan favorite. The scene was punchy and catchy as the words rolled off the tongue and had a lasting impact. The famous duel will go down in history as one of the most historically savage. It wasn't just cool, but also accurate and hilarious. Also, could Doc Holliday outduel his enemy before drawing his gun? Mind-blowing and savage, There's no doubt that Kilmer played a considerable role in the film's overall success, but finding out that he single-handedly came through with the savage dialogue makes it even better. The clever writing and meticulous information gathering to ensure accuracy are a winning combo. It further cements Tombstone as one of the best movies in cinematic history. Number 16. The President Saw It Before Siskel and Ebert. Legendary film critics Gene Siskel and Roger Ebert, who hosted a popular TV show from the 70s to the 90s, were still at the forefront of film criticism when Tombstone emerged in the early 90s. Yet, they somehow missed Tombstone because they were unable to get a screening. According to Ebert, he kept hearing about Kilmer's excellent performance as Holliday, but they hadn't gotten around to watching it. One of the people who spoke so fondly of Kilmer's outstanding performance in the film was the president at the time, Bill Clinton. The critic duo eventually got to watch it for themselves, and while Ebert liked it, Siskel did not. This did not affect the movie's overall performance, but it was incredible to witness the President of the United States give his raving reviews before Siskel and Ebert gave theirs at the time. Number 17. Wyatt Earp Did Shoot Curly Bill. One major scene in Tombstone is when Wyatt Earp walks into a hail of bullets seemingly unscathed as he kills Curly Bill with a single, brutal shot. This scene seems like something straight out of an action movie, but it did happen to blow your mind. This scene was factual and not exaggerated. According to first-hand historical accounts, this scene happened. The real Wyatt Earp did charge into a creek during a standoff. Curly Bill fired and missed, while Earp stayed calm and silent as he fired one shot, which hit Curly Bill in the stomach. The scene is based on the accounts of a man named Johnny Barnes. He temporarily survived that shootout and stated that Earp did precisely what the film portrayed, down to every single bullet. This is another remarkable fact that is incredible to consider. While it's possible that the scene could have been exaggerated a bit, it's wild to believe that it wasn't made up for the film. Number 18. Kurt Russell. Cut scenes to give Kilmer more screen time. Doc Holliday in Tombstone isn't just a supporting character and the emotional glue holding the story together. You might think this was a mere coincidence of editing, but as it turns out, Kurt Russell personally made the choice. Production had been struggling at the time, and Kurt Russell took it upon himself to step in and take on a leadership role. While Russell was never credited with helping production maintain direction and consistency, he helped guide the film through many chaotic moments. He sat with editors, rearranged scenes, and reviewed rallies, and he knew the story they had, and, most importantly, the story they needed to tell. While taking on this leadership role, Russell saw something special in Val Kilmer's performance. There was humor, heart, and an astonishing level of vulnerability. This would have sent other actors into a competitive mode. Instead, Russell channeled it all. He approved changes that reduced some of his dialogue and shifted some scenes to give Kilmer more room for a character arc. This was the ultimate act of leadership and trust in the story. Russell realized that creating a great film means stepping aside for another voice to move the story forward. Number 19. Bruce Broughton had to race the clock. Not many Tombstone fans know this, but composer Bruce Broughton was not the first choice for Tombstone. And when he got the job, he had no time to breathe. As the story goes, the first composer fell through, and Bruce Broughton was called in at the last minute, with only 4 weeks to write, record, and finalize Tombstone's entire score. Bruce Broughton's contribution to Tombstone remains one of the most unsung triumphs in Western cinema. While most major films afford composers months to craft and fine-tune a score, Broughton was handed only days, a near impossible timeline for something so critical to a film's emotional depth. Yet, instead of buckling under pressure, he leaned into the chaos with quiet resolve, channeling instinct over perfectionism. Drawing from the turbulence swirling around the production, he wove a score that didn't just fill scenes, it gave them soul. He sculpted Doc Holliday's moments with a haunting fragility, letting the music echo the character's internal decay beneath his bravado. For Wyatt Earp, Broughton composed in measured tension. This low, simmering fury built alongside the character's moral unraveling. The score spoke when the script didn't, amplified moments of grief, grit, and unspoken vengeance. And it did so without demanding the spotlight. It simply worked, sinking beneath the surface to carry the film's weight when other elements teetered on the edge. What makes this achievement all the more impressive is the backdrop it rose from. Tombstone was a notoriously turbulent production. Creative disagreements, last-minute director changes, and a script constantly in flux. Studios feared the film would collapse before release. But somehow, amid the dust and discord, Broughton's music grounded the chaos. It added cohesion, elevating key scenes from good to unforgettable. His score didn't just accompany the film, it helped save it. And in doing so, Broughton delivered one of the most evocative and enduring Western soundscapes of the 1990s. It's a reminder that sometimes it's not the sweeping timelines or big budgets that create greatness. Sometimes it's instinct, talent, and the willingness to trust the music when everything else is uncertain. Number 20. The Battle of the Earps. In the early 1990s, Kevin Costner's Wyatt Earp was set to be a major studio biopic. Meanwhile, Tombstone received less special treatment with a modest budget and a quiet release, and was described as slow and distant. Tombstone, on the other hand, was an instant hit. Word of mouth spread about the film, and its performances were quoted, and its style revered. The film, which was once overlooked, has achieved legendary status among Western lovers and film critics alike. Tombstone came out in December 1993, and 6 months later, Wyatt Earp starring Kevin Costner was out. In a way, it followed in the footsteps of Tombstone, but it was unable to capture the audience in the same way. This shows that even with a half-decent budget, true cinema could still be achieved. In its first weekend of release, Tombstone finished third at the domestic box office, and it managed to stay in that position for its second week and still increased its intake by 35%. Tombstone might have had a chaotic shoot, lots of rewrites, and a less-than-ideal production, but it was an honest cinematic masterpiece that has earned itself a legendary spot in the history of film. What's your favorite part of the movie? Share them with us in the comments. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like and subscribe for more. Before you go, click on the video displayed on your screen.